Hello, welcome again to FAIRtax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton,
I'm Bob Scarborough.
and we are the FAIRtax Guys, complete with Fat Albert and scrolling banner, which you can get at fairtaxstore.org
You
and
can't get
take to.
out there though.
No, you can't get Fat Albert at the FAIRtax store, but you can get one of those scrolling banners and take it to a Wake Forest basketball game. Oops, that got out again. How about that?
It's hard for me to get to games after they go into evening time because I'm a.
Yeah, I know it is. I just have a heart. I just have a fun time messing with you a little bit.
Oh, and now that the sun is, this show being recorded 2 days before the fall back to standard time, it's really dark by the time I get to bed. I mean, it's in
Yes,
the.
but by the time this show streams, it will be basketball season. They will have the Atlantic Coast Conference will be playing basketball at this time. So I'll be switching from watching Alabama football to watching North Carolina basketball,
Right.
and an occasional Wake Forest game too. Why not?
Yeah, what the heck?
All right. Well, I'll tell you what. Certainly appreciate everybody tuning in. Share the video if you would. That always helps when that happens. And if
Yeah,
you
it
got a
does.
question, or a comment about it, just type it there in the comments. Most of us are going to be watching, and I will usually watch these. And Randy Fisher is always there to answer questions. So again, we welcome, even though the video portion is recorded. The comment says this stream is live and you can ask your questions. John Gaber is usually on as well. He's very knowledgeable about what's going on. And so we'd love to hear from you here on FAIRtax Power Radio. But as we do every time right here, right out of the gate,
Yeah.
let me get back into Congress.gov. The Congress critters are doing what Congress critters do, and they are continuing to mess with the tax code, which is one of the reasons, one of the biggest reasons that we need to tell all of them to take a long walk on a short pier when it comes to messing with the tax code and replace this monstrosity that they call the Internal Revenue Code with the fair tax. Again, what we do, we put the words Internal Revenue Code in quotes in the search bar at Congress.gov. And as of the day we're reporting this, 2,085 hits on that search, including HR 10033 from Representative Bradley Schneider of Illinois. This is the Expanding Clean Fuel Production Act of 2024. Expanding Clean Fuel Production Act of 2024. And you drill into the text in it, and it says this is a bill to amend the Internal Revenue Code to extend the clean fuel production credit. As we mentioned last week, there is credit after credit after credit after credit in the tax code, most of which come from lobbyists. And this is just another one. They're either extending it or they're getting rid of one and replacing it with another one. They are constantly monkeying with the tax code, which is why nobody can understand it, which is why we need to get rid of it and replace it with a fair tax.
Absolutely. Just without question. And we sit here in the middle of the fray, if you will, and we folks that are watching and listening, you are part of our team in terms of getting the word out. And that's one thing that I always like to tell people. Go tell five other people and tell them to tell five other people and use those cards. There's palm cards, there's business size cards that have information about the fair tax on them, and you can just pass them out like candy.
Mm-hmm.
But because on those two items that I just mentioned, the palm cards and the business cards are free and no shipping from the store, and you need to do that. Why not?
Indeed. Well, it's been a while since I found one to go in the Hall of Shame, but I think I've got one here. HR 10028 from Representative Hanna, Khanna of California. And a lot of times when we put something in the Hall of Shame, it's not because it's a particularly shameful purpose. It's just crazy that something like that has to be in the tax code. This one I'm going to file under, this is a shameful thing to mess with, to amend the Internal Revenue Code to disallow the deduction of certain expenses relating to ownership of single-family homes by specified large investors, to impose an excise tax on the sale of such homes by such investors, and to prohibit federal mortgage assistance relating to certain large investors. Can you say class warfare using the tax code?
Every day. It happens every day.
Ah, Well, I'll tell you what. Well, I looked at it just before we came on the air here. There's not a tremendous amount in the 2024 tax proposal Hall of Shame. So hopefully we'll have enough to do an entire program on it here on the last calendar day of 2024 that FairtaX Power Radio airs. We will go through the 2024 tax proposal Hall of Shame, but this one's going in there. Just class warfare using the tax code. I don't care which side it's you're on, who you're attacking. That is just not what the tax code is all about, and we shouldn't be doing it. HR 10025 is the next one, the American Home Ownership Opportunity Act of 2024. Again, this one's got some text in it I have to click into. To amend, oh, would you believe it? Another tax credit. To amend the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 to establish a new first-time homebuyer credit and to establish the starter home construction credit. More tax credits that some people get and some people don't. Winners and losers in the tax code. Not what the tax code was intended to be. The tax code is intended to raise revenue for the government, not to pick winners and give people a credit and some people a credit and other people not. And this is the craziness that needs to go away with the fair tax.
Please, please.
Absolutely. All right, let's see. Let's dig another one here. 10013. You talk about names on some of these bills. Dig this one. This is the Education Not Agitation Act of 2024. And this one comes from your neck of the woods. You know a guy named Greg Murphy.
Heard the name. Where would I know his name from?
North Carolina District 3.
Don't know.
Greg Murphy there. I don't know where District 3 in North Carolina is, but Greg Murphy represents that district, and he has put forth the Education Not Agitation Act. Oh, I tell you what, that's funny just to look at. You dig into the text here, and it says, to amend the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 to exclude individuals who have committed certain crimes from being eligible students. Read that again. To exclude individuals who have committed certain crimes from being eligible students for the purpose of the American Opportunity Credit, the Lifetime Learning Credit, and the deduction on interest paid on qualified education loans. That says if you've been a bad boy or a bad girl, and they don't want you to be eligible for these opportunity credits. That's your buddy up there, Greg Murphy in North Carolina.
In the East Coast. He's there at he's there in Greenville, North Carolina, and closer to the coast and into Pender County, and probably includes our military bases right at the coastline there in North Carolina.
He's probably eating a lot of good Eastern style North Carolina barbecue, but that's another Education Not Agitation Act. Where do they come up with the names for these things? Who knows?
I'm telling you, there's probably an opportunity, private business to come up with those names. They have
great.
Meetings. That's it. They have a meeting. Okay, let's put all the names. Here we go.
Okay, last one. HR 10004. This is another one that's an acronym, the FLOAT Act, FLOAT, the FLOAT Act of 2024. This is Representative Josh Gottenheimer of New Jersey. They're in Jim Bennett's territory. And this is a bill to amend the Internal Revenue Code to provide an above-the-line deduction for flood insurance premiums. Now, above-the-line deduction, I wasn't sure what that was. I looked it up. That's a deduction you can take on top of the standard deduction if you are even on top of your itemized deductions. So, right. But it really, of course, if you're going to itemize deductions, and you could itemize that one, but an above the line is a deduction you can take even if you take the standard deduction. So, Representative Gottenheimer there in New Jersey wants to provide that deduction for flood insurance premiums. So, whatever. I don't have much of a comment about that one, but that's the stuff that goes into the tax code. And of course, obviously, not all of these proposals are going to become law, but enough of them have that we've got 70-some thousand pages of tax code, which includes the statutes and the case law and all the regulations that go along with it. And every bit of that goes away with the fair tax. I tell you, that is just what we need to do.
Crazy. Just crazy. So
Absolutely crazy, just crazy. All right. Well, let's move on here on Fair Tax Power Radio. This is something that we put together almost 2 years ago that we think of is worthy of being mentioned again. We call this the Fair Tax, the rest of the story. You can tell I'm a Paul Harvey fan. Anybody who's ever worked in radio has got to be a Paul Harvey fan. It's just a requirement.
great respect for the man. Great respect.
That's just a requirement for being a part of that industry. But the rest of the story that Paul Harvey made famous, well, there's the fair tax, the rest of the story. And this is stuff that you are not going to hear about the fair tax in the media. And we're talking about the legacy media, the television networks, the major newspapers like the Washington Post, the New York Times, and also social media. There are people that just love to get on social media, even more so than in the legacy media, and just demagogue an issue to death, and
Sure.
not necessarily tell the truth about it. But the major thing that you're not going to hear in the media about the fair tax is that the fair tax replaces the income tax.
Yeah.
You hear politicians and pundits and all left and right, all of them, and you see I've heard the political ads this election cycle as well, all trying to claim, oh, my opponent supports a tax that's going to make your life 30% more expensive. They try to claim that the fair tax will be a massive increase in the cost of living because everything you buy now has a 30% tax on it. They don't tell you the rest of the story because in reality, what the fair tax does, it simply changes the point at which you are taxed from when you make your money to when you spend your money. It replaces the tax on your income. So when you get the fair tax law, you will bring home your entire paycheck with no deductions, with no withholding, with no federal payroll taxes. People working for cash under the table, people who steal their neighbor's lawnmower and don't report the fair market value on their 1040 forms. These people become taxpayers when they buy things under the fair tax. So a larger tax base, many people see their overall tax burden go down, but
Right.
the demagogues in the media are just not conveniently mentioning that the fair tax replaces the income tax. You have a lot more money in your pocket when your income is not taxed, and you can decide by when you buy things and how much you buy things and whether you buy new or used. You can control your tax liability a lot more with a fair tax than you can with the income tax. And I thought that was cool.
And also, yeah, we were talking just a second ago, about the piling on the 30% on top of the casual consumer of news may hear a headline and in 30 seconds hear that and go, well, I'm not for that. And now all of a sudden you've got an uphill battle when you try to convince that individual or group of people that the fair tax does not do that. It eliminates the income tax is gone. So you're going to end up with it being about the same amount, but then you get to decide when you pay the tax, as opposed to I got to keep a shoebox full of information and receipts and all, and then turn it all over and prove to the federal government that I made what I made and not what they may have thought I made, etc. It's
Mm-hmm.
not corporate welfare. The fair tax isn't corporate welfare either.
No, the idea that corporations must pay their fair share. I mean, that makes really good political rhetoric. You hear a lot of that, but it's an economic fallacy. Corporations don't pay taxes. Corporate taxes are just like labor and materials. They are a cost of doing business. It gets passed on down the line, largely to the consumers who purchase the goods and services that these corporations produce. But also, their shareholders end up paying that corporate tax in the form of lower dividends. Their employees end up paying that corporate tax in the form of less generous benefits and lower wages. Individuals pay every penny of a corporate tax. So the fair tax, by removing the corporate income tax, is not corporate welfare because the corporations are collecting that money in the form of higher prices most of the time and remitting it into the treasury. But, when taxes go up, so do prices. And
Right.
so it's just crazy that people think that taxing a corporation is, well, that's a great idea because that means that they're going to pay the tax and I don't have to. But they don't really think that through and think that, oh, wait a minute, if these corporations have to pay this extra tax, that means their costs have gone up. That means their prices are going up, and I'm going to pay it anyway. Bad idea.
It really is. The United States will become the tax friendliest place on the planet to do business when the corporate income tax goes away. When it's gone, can you imagine some of those larger businesses, big companies, publicly traded companies, they have a whole floor, rhetorically speaking, that deals with tax compliance and what you could do with putting young people in or an incubator on that floor, or you come up with a new innovative plan to make your product or service better and better and better. All that time that people spend on keeping up with the income tax at the corporate level too, tax compliance throughout the whole operation is it can be that energy can be turned to something productive,
Yeah.
and the time that it takes and the people that are affected by all of that can now be reoriented to helping the company continue to grow. And people always say, well, the CPAs, what are they going to do? Well, they'll help the business become more lean and mean and do things that will enhance the business's ability to compete as because it's still going to be important to have a lean machine to operate within the rule of law that's there for that for that company, for that industry. When the corporate income tax goes away, goods made here in the United States can finally compete on an even playing field with foreign competitors on the world market.
Yeah, imagine that
Imagine.
when say Ford Motor Company makes a car, the they do not get reimbursed the taxes that they have paid on that car. The taxes that they have had to pay as part of the cost of doing business has to be embedded in the price of that car. But if they're going up against a Volkswagen or a Hyundai or something that's made someplace else that has the value added tax, that corporation gets the tax paid refunded to them so they can sell their product on the world market a lot cheaper than the United States can. And so the fair tax is going to be a great leveler of the playing field when it comes to helping U.S. Companies compete against foreign competitors. And when that happens, the demand for U.S. goods is going to go up, which means the demand for workers is going to go up. There will be more jobs available because there needs to be more stuff produced. It's just that the fair tax is the greatest jobs bill ever made.
Oh, and beyond that, I mean, as far as a young entrepreneur or a single, employee, business owner, sole proprietorship, can you imagine how much time is going to be saved for them not having to be in a bookkeeping mode or outsourcing that to somebody, and that cost comes back and saved as part of the operating budget of the company, and they are able to compete in their market and serve their customers better, and and innovate and maybe come up with something new and different that's never been done before, simply because their minds are free of having to deal with the burden of compliance with tax code.
Absolutely. The compliance costs, again, costs of doing business that are passed on to their consumers, their shareholders, their employees. All of that goes away when the fair tax replaces the corporate income tax. Prices at the wholesale level will go down significantly because of the competitive pressures in the free market economy, to the point that when the fair tax is added back in at the retail level, there is not going to be a 23 or 30% increase in the cost of everything you buy with the fair tax. It's just plain not going to happen. And you will not hear that in the media, never. Another thing you won't hear in the media, you'll hear the opposite of this in the media. The media will tell you that the fair tax is a Republican plot to shift the tax burden from the wealthy to the middle and lower class taxpayers. It is just simply not the case. The media is going to tell you the exact 180-degree opposite from the truth on that one. Again, we mentioned this before. The fair tax is not a Republican idea. It had bipartisan support when it was first introduced. It was developed completely outside government by a bunch of private sector economists that are just simply looking for the best tax system possible. Now, John Linder, we've mentioned him from Georgia, Republican representative there who has since retired. He was the first one to put it in legislative language and introduce it to Congress, but the fair tax was not John Linder's idea. You cannot hang the fair tax on any politician of any stripe because it was developed independently of Congress by independent private sector economists. You will never hear that mentioned in the media.
And again, folks consume news in bits and pieces. It's not, I don't know that anybody that sits down, well, maybe you do, but that sits down and watches a whole newscast, because you have social media, you got the news feeds on X, you've got, other places other than the nightly news to get your information. But people, when you hear on the minute update news, network news on a radio station, for example, you're not getting the full story. You're just getting a little bit of it. And then, of course, the networks that have not journalists, but that have analysts that come on and talk about a certain whatever they're on there talking about. They have a tendency to just gloss over things. And the rich are going to pay their fair share with the fair tax. You don't hear that. It does not hurt poor. You hear the opposite, as you said a minute ago. There's no deduction. There's no loopholes. There's no special favors. This is something that we talk about all the time when we do the Congress.gov segment, is that the people have there's no breaks. There's nothing carved out for a particular industry, for a particular person or group of people.
As we mentioned in the Congress.gov segment a lot, credit after credit after credit after credit after credit. And some people get it and some people don't. All of that goes away. The fair tax is just by its very nature fair. Now, this document we're looking at was actually created a couple of years ago, so this may sound somewhat dated, but the point is still true, that a lot of the people are saying, well, wait a minute, we can't have the fair tax. That will shift the tax burden down to the middle class. But there's so many of these people that are claiming that we have to keep the income tax in order to keep the tax burden on the wealthy. Those are the same people who were obsessing over getting Donald Trump's tax returns so they could show the world just how little tax he actually paid. And they used the leaked returns. Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, a lot of ultra wealthy Americans, their tax returns were stolen and leaked with the point of making, these guys aren't paying their fair share. Oh, but we need to keep the system that makes them pay their fair share. Do they realize how self-contradictory they sound? And if we're going to make them pay their fair share, make them pay their fair share when they fill up their jets with jet fuel,
or buy a new yacht.
Yes.
Under the current system, 155 million plus or minus tax filers. Mm-hmm. And under the fair tax, this is our United States of America citizens. And anybody that goes to the cash register and pays 250 million plus or minus taxpayers. So the pressure to prove that the fair tax would not be able to support the operation of the federal government as it is currently budgeted, there's a lot of fallacy in that, and you can shine the light of truth on it. Think about it for a minute, folks. You walk to the cash register, you got what you're going to buy, you put it up there, you pay it. The guy behind you is an international traveler. The person behind that person is an illegal alien or an undocumented worker, whatever you want to call them. And the person behind them is the guy that he's a gang member, and he's having to pay to buy whatever he's buying. every one of them is going to get a notice that says you paid a fair tax of such and such amount on your purchase. So all of that money is going to support the revenue that we use to operate the government. Fair tax, tax on consumption, income
Yeah.
tax. It just is as plain as day how great it would be. And we're a couple of seniors, senior Scarborough, senior Paxton.
Yes, but I'm
It
retired and you're still working.
does not purchase. Well, that doesn't necessarily mean I'm not old. I just looked in the mirror the other day and I said, "Who is that guy? Who posted this picture up?" So anyway, we don't get punished. Seniors don't get punished, and it's funny because everybody loses when people are talking about clouding up the understanding of the fair tax. It's the young people, it's the poor people, the middle income people, the seniors, rich people can't, it just isn't going to work. Well, fair tax opponents claim that the fair tax is unfair to seniors because it amounts to double taxation.
Well,
Retirement savings were taxed when the dollars were earned, and under the fair tax, they'll be taxed again when they're spent. That
well,
breaks down under closer scrutiny. Go
it
ahead.
does. And I'll tell you what, we may have to apply that closer scrutiny next week here at FAIRtax Power Radio. There's quite a good bit left on this article that we found here, but we are just about out of time once again. Doesn't time fly when you're having fun? Again, we certainly appreciate those who are liking the videos, who are sharing the videos, who are commenting on the videos. And say it helps us a lot when that happens because we need to get the word out that you can bring home your entire paycheck. You can get a tax refund every week or every month. You can eliminate telling the government all about your finances. You don't have to write tax returns out. There is a tax plan that makes that happen. It's called a fair tax, and we need it.
Boy, do we.
All righty.
Not
Well, that's going
only
to as I say, that's going to wrap up this edition of FAIRtax Power Radio. We can continue this next week. There's still some more meat on that bone, and we will do just that. But until we meet again, same time, same channel next week here on FAIRtax Power Radio, I'm Bob Paxton.
Bob Scarborough.
And we are the FAIRtax Guys, reminding you the fair tax is the only truly fair tax. And once you understand it,
We'll demand it.
roll tide again.
So tell me, how could I pay less taxes?
Less.
Yeah, I'm trying to get ahead, so how can I pay less?
Well, I suppose you could pay less taxes by earning less money, or you could give to charity.
How is that going to help?
Actually, I'm not supposed to tell you this, but if you know the right people, okay, or if you have a really good lawyer, you can usually get around the big ones.
If I may, under the fair tax, to pay less taxes, you would simply consume less. You would control how much you pay and when you pay your taxes simply by choosing what you purchase and when you purchase something.
So I could stay focused and get ahead.
Exactly.